A retired firefighter takes in a scarred rescue dog, thinking it's just another second chance, until the dog starts howling at 1:12 a.m. every night, fixed on an old warehouse across the street. The howls wake the whole block, draw suspicious trucks, and pull a worried daughter back into a fight she thought was over. What seems like a haunted dog becomes a living alarm pointing at something dangerous and hidden, something a powerful local developer would kill to keep secret. Who hears the warning in time, and what will happen if they don't? Through the thin walls of his modest ranch house, Lennox heard the whispers start again. That dog. Every single night. Someone ought to. He pressed his palms against his kitchen counter, trying to steady himself. The red numbers on his microwave clock clicked to 1:12 in the morning. Right on schedule, Rook's howl pierced the quiet neighborhood. The sound wasn't angry or aggressive. It carried something else, something that made the hair on Lennox's neck stand up. Pain? Warning? He couldn't quite place it, but it resonated with the same gut feeling he'd relied on during his firefighting days, when instinct told him a structure was about to collapse, or a victim needed immediate extraction. "Easy, boy," Lennox murmured, limping over to where Rook stood rigid by the living room window. The shepherd's muscles were taut under his black and tan fur, his torn ear twitching. Those amber eyes fixed on something Lennox couldn't see in the darkness beyond their yard. Lennox ran his hand along Rook's back, feeling old scars beneath the fur. "What is it, buddy? What's got you so worked up?" The howling continued, a sound that seemed to build from deep in the dog's chest. It wasn't the typical neighborhood dog bark or excited yelp. This was different, mournful and urgent at the same time. 3 sharp knocks at his front door made Lennox jump. Mrs. Peterson from next door stood on his porch in her flowered robe, her face pinched with concern. "Lennox, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but have you checked on Walter? He hasn't answered his phone and his lights have been on all evening." Walter Jenkins lived in the small, yellow house across the street. The elderly man usually kept strict routines, lights out by 9, like clockwork. "I'll head over," Lennox said, grabbing his jacket. His back twinged as he stepped off his porch, a reminder of the warehouse collapse that had ended his career. Rook pressed against his leg, whining now instead of howling. The night air felt heavy with humidity. Walter's porch light cast yellow pools on his neatly trimmed lawn. Lennox knocked firmly. "Walter? It's Lennox from across the way." No response. He tried the handle. Unlocked. That wasn't like Walter at all. "Hello?" Lennox called out as he entered. "Walter, you here?" A crash from the kitchen had him moving faster, ignoring the protest in his lower back. He found Walter crumpled on the linoleum, a broken coffee, mug scattered around him. Lennox dropped to his knees, checking vitals like muscle memory. Pulse thread, but present. Breathing shallow. He pulled out his phone to call 911 while keeping 2 fingers on Walter's carotid artery. Rook paced the kitchen doorway, whining continuously now. The sound made Lennox's skin crawl. The ambulance arrived within minutes, red lights painting the walls in rhythmic sweeps. But something felt off about the paramedics' response. They moved efficiently, but their faces were tight, controlled. The younger one glanced at his equipment readout and quickly covered the display. "Sir, we'll take it from here," the senior paramedic said, his tone clipped. "Please wait outside." Lennox recognized the protective instinct to shield civilians from difficult scenes, but this felt different. Their body language was wrong, too guarded, too careful. From outside, he watched them load Walter into the ambulance. The younger paramedic spoke quietly into his radio, terms Lennox couldn't quite catch. Their eyes met briefly through the vehicle's window. The man looked away too quickly. Mrs. Peterson hugged her robe tighter. Poor Walter. He seemed fine when I spoke to him yesterday. Lennox nodded absently, his mind racing. The timing nagged at him. 1:12 exactly when Rook started howling. The paramedics' strange behavior. The equipment they didn't want anyone to see. Back home, Rook had finally settled, curled in his bed in the corner. But his eyes remained alert, following Lennox's movements. Those weren't the eyes of a simple pet. They held awareness, concern, and something that looked unsettlingly like knowledge. Lennox sank into his armchair, his back aching fiercely now. The quiet felt oppressive after all the commotion. He thought about Walter, about the paramedics' tense expressions, about Rook's haunting cries that seemed to predict it all. Something wasn't adding up. And judging by the way Rook's ears remained pricked toward the window, this wasn't over. The dog's previous scars hinted at an ugly past, perhaps one connected to whatever was happening now. Lennox had always trusted his instincts on the job. Those same instincts were screaming that there was more to this than a simple medical emergency. He reached down to scratch behind Rook's torn ear. The shepherd leaned into his touch, but those amber eyes never left the window. Outside, the night pressed close against the glass, full of questions neither of them could answer yet. The microwave clock blinked 1:45. Less than 23 hours until Rook would howl again. Lennox had a feeling tomorrow night would bring more than just disturbed neighbors. He needed to start paying very close attention to exactly what happened at 1:12 a.m. Sleep eluded Lennox that night. He tossed and turned, his mind replaying the paramedics' strange behavior. By morning, exhaustion had dulled the edge of his suspicions. Maybe he was seeing patterns where none existed. A habit from his firefighting days when every detail could matter. Rook lay by the kitchen door while Lennox made coffee, those amber eyes following his every move. In daylight, it seemed foolish to imagine the dog's howling meant anything more than ordinary animal behavior. Still, when Lennox glanced out his kitchen window, his gaze was drawn to the hulking shape of the old warehouse that dominated the neighborhood's eastern edge. The building had stood empty for years until Carlton Riggs bought it 6 months ago. Everyone knew Riggs. His name appeared on half the town's charitable projects. The local paper regularly featured photos of him cutting ribbons or presenting oversized checks, his silver hair gleaming and practiced smile never wavering. That afternoon, Mrs. Peterson caught Lennox as he returned from walking Rook. "About last night," she said, wringing her hands. "I spoke with some others on the block. We think maybe you should let this go." "Let what go?" "The warehouse. We've seen you watching it. Carlton Riggs has done so much for this town. The new library wing, the youth center. He's a good man." Lennox kept his face neutral. "I'm just concerned about Rook's howling disturbing people." "Yes, well." She glanced over her shoulder. "Just be careful what questions you ask. Some things are better left alone." That night, like clockwork, Rook started howling at 1:12. Lennox followed the dog's gaze through the window. The warehouse loomed in the darkness, most of its windows boarded up. But wait, was that a flicker of light behind one of the boards? He grabbed his jacket. "Come on, boy." They crossed the empty street, Rook pressed against his leg. The warehouse took up nearly a full block, its brick walls stained with decades of industrial grime. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, topped with razor wire that gleamed in the streetlights. As they walked the perimeter, Lennox noticed fresh tire tracks in the gravel lot. Strange. He hadn't seen any official construction vehicles during daylight hours. The only movement had been unmarked trucks arriving late at night, their headlights off until they were well clear of the neighborhood. A metallic clang made him freeze. It came from inside the warehouse. A door closing, maybe? Rook's ears pricked forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Lennox pulled out his phone and started recording, slowly panning across the building's facade. There, a faint light moved behind a boarded window on the second floor. The screech of brakes had him ducking into the shadows. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the warehouse's loading dock. Two men got out, moving with purpose. One carried what looked like scientific equipment. They disappeared inside through a heavy metal door. Lennox's heart pounded. The scene triggered memories of hazmat calls, of industrial accidents where corporate types tried to hide evidence before emergency services arrived. Something about those, men's movements, their secretive behavior, set off every warning bell he'd developed over 15 years of service. Rook whined softly, pressing closer. Looking down at the shepherd's scarred face, Lennox suddenly wondered if the dog's past might connect to whatever was happening here. Those old chemical burns, that desperate howling always aimed at this building. It couldn't be coincidence. His phone vibrated, a text from Mrs. Peterson. "Saw your lights on. Please remember what I said. Mr. Riggs doesn't like people snooping around his properties." The message's timing made his skin crawl. Were the neighbors watching him? Warning him? Or threatening him? More lights appeared inside the warehouse, moving purposefully now. Lennox backed away, tugging Rook with him. They'd seen enough for one night. But as they walked home, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd crossed some invisible line. His firefighter's instincts had never led him wrong before. They'd saved his life more than once. And right now, they were screaming that something dangerous was happening behind those boarded windows. The next day, Lennox drove downtown to the county records office. The clerk's smile faded when he asked about the warehouse permits. "Those files are currently under review," she said, not meeting his eyes. "Try back in a few weeks." "I only need to verify the zoning classification," Lennox pressed, "for a neighborhood council meeting." "I'm sorry, sir. The records aren't available." As he turned to leave, he noticed a familiar silver-haired figure through the office's glass doors. Carlton Riggs stood chatting with what looked like county officials, his smile bright but his eyes cold. One of the men gestured toward the records office, and Riggs's gaze shifted, meeting Lennox's for just a moment. The developer's expression never changed, but something in that brief eye contact made Lennox's throat tight. It wasn't just wealth and influence radiating from Riggs. It was power, the kind that could make records disappear and silence questions before they were asked. Back home, Lennox found an envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a glossy brochure for Riggs Development's latest charitable project, a new firefighters' memorial fund. Paperclipped to it was a business card with a handwritten note. "Always grateful for our retired first responders service. Let's keep it that way. CR." Lennox stared at the card for a long time. The message was clear enough. But as Rook settled at his feet, those knowing amber eyes fixed on the warehouse again, Lennox felt his jaw set. He'd spent his career running toward danger while others ran away. He wasn't about to stop now, not when his instincts told him lives might be at stake. The sun began to set, painting the warehouse windows in blood-red light. In a few hours, Rook would start howling again. And this time, Lennox would be ready to dig deeper into whatever Carlton Riggs was hiding behind those walls. The veterinary clinic smelled of antiseptic and kibble, with undercurrents of wet fur and the faintest trace of anxiety that seemed to permeate all waiting rooms. Lennox shifted uncomfortably in the hard plastic chair, his back giving a twinge of protest as he watched Rook's tail rhythmically thump against the worn linoleum. The shepherd's eyes remained fixed on Dr. Maribel Cortez as her practiced hands moved with gentle precision over his scarred flank, pausing occasionally to examine the healed tissue beneath his coarse fur. His physical recovery is remarkable, all things considered, she said, her voice warm with professional satisfaction as she scratched behind Rook's torn ear. The dog leaned into her touch, eyes half closing in momentary contentment. The chemical burns have healed well, considering what he went through. The tissue regeneration is better than I expected when you first brought him in. But the howling? Lennox leaned forward, wincing slightly as his spine protested. Every night, same time, like clockwork. The neighbors are getting upset. Mrs. Hendricks threatened to call animal control yesterday. His fingers twisted nervously around Rook's leash, the worn leather warm against his palm. Maribel's dark eyes studied Rook thoughtfully, a vertical line appearing between her brows as she considered the problem. She tucked a stray curl behind her ear, her expression contemplative rather than dismissive. Dogs perceive things we can't even imagine. Ultrasonic frequencies, minute vibrations, even subtle changes in air pressure or electromagnetic fields. Their senses are far more acute than ours, operating in realms we barely comprehend. She pulled out a pen light from her pocket, the small beam illuminating Rook's eyes as she carefully checked his pupils. The shepherd stayed perfectly still, showing none of the night's agitation, his amber eyes reflecting the light with an almost supernatural glow. This isn't aggression or plain trauma response. I've seen plenty of both. Her voice dropped, becoming more contemplative. He's trying to communicate something specific. There's purpose behind it. You believe me then? Lennox felt a weight lift from his chest, the tension he'd been carrying for days easing slightly. After endless dismissive neighbors and stern warnings to keep his crazy dog quiet, her calm, analytical acceptance was like a breath of fresh air in a room that had been sealed too long. I believe in paying attention when animals try to tell us something. Maribel straightened, making careful notes in Rook's file, her handwriting neat and precise. Especially intelligent ones like him. There's awareness in those eyes, a consciousness that goes deeper than most. He knows exactly what he's doing. This isn't random behavior. A truck engine growled outside, the heavy diesel rumble cutting through the clinic's quiet atmosphere. Through the clinic window, smudged with paw prints and nose marks, Lennox spotted a mud-splattered pickup idling across the street. The driver, a weathered man in a hard hat with Carlton Riggs Construction emblazoned on the side, stared directly at them with unnerving intensity before pulling away, leaving a cloud of exhaust in his wake. "One of Riggs' crew," Lennox muttered, a chill running up his spine despite the clinic's warmth. "They've been watching me since I started asking questions about the warehouse. Same truck drove by my place 3 times yesterday." Maribel's expression hardened slightly, a subtle transformation that didn't change her features so much as the energy behind them. Carlton Riggs has a lot of friends in this town, and enemies who've learned to stay quiet after what happened to the last environmental inspector who questioned his permits. She paused, seeming to debate whether to say more. People's memories get conveniently short when their livelihoods depend on keeping silent. "You sound like you've had run-ins with him before." Lennox studied her face, noting the tiny muscle that twitched along her jaw. "Let's just say his development projects don't always consider the environmental impact on local wildlife or water tables." She straightened up, professional mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. "Bring Rook back next week. I want to monitor him more closely, maybe run some specialized tests for chemical sensitivities. There might be residual effects from his exposure that are triggering these episodes." The clinic door chimed, the bell's cheerful tone contrasting with the tension that instantly filled the room. A teenage girl with wavy auburn hair stood framed in the entrance, arms crossed defensively across her chest, backpack slung over one shoulder. Della. Lennox's heart clenched painfully. He hadn't expected her until tomorrow, had planned to clean the house again, prepare better. Dad. Her tone was flat, expressionless, though her eyes told a different story. Mom said I'd find you here with your new project. The emphasis on the last word cut deeper than any shouting could have. Rook's tail wagged hopefully at the newcomer, his body language opening up in welcome. Della deliberately avoided looking at him, her gaze fixed somewhere over Lennox's left shoulder. You're early, Lennox managed, his throat suddenly dry. I thought your bus wasn't until… I took an earlier one. Clearly you were too busy to check your messages. She hefted her backpack higher, the gesture somehow making her look both younger and more distant. Can we go, or are you still obsessing over the dog? Mom's got a date tonight, so I can't exactly go back there. Maribel tactfully busied herself with paperwork, becoming intensely interested in reorganizing Rook's file. Lennox felt heat creep up his neck, the familiar shame of parental failure washing over him. Dr. Cortez, thank you for your time. I'll call about that follow-up appointment. The drive home was painfully silent, except for Rook's steady panting from the back seat. Shepard occasionally pressed his nose against the window, tracking something only he could sense. Della stared fixedly out the passenger window, shoulders rigid beneath her oversized jacket, the 6 inches of space between them on the truck's bench seat stretching like miles. The last rays of sunset painted the looming warehouse's dark bulk in deep crimson shadows as they passed, its boarded windows like blind eyes watching their progress. Your room's all ready, Lennox offered, desperate to bridge the gulf. I got those band posters you wanted. The one with the skeleton guitarist is over your bed. Great, because that totally makes up for everything. Della's voice cracked slightly, betraying the emotion behind her carefully constructed wall of indifference. 2 years, Dad. 2 years of barely seeing you after the accident, of you canceling weekends and disappearing into yourself. And now suddenly you've got time to rescue stray dogs and chase conspiracy theories about empty buildings. It's not like that. Lennox gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles whitening with the pressure. There's something wrong at that warehouse. Rook knows it. He's trying to warn us. If you could just hear him. Oh my God, stop! Della turned to face him fully, eyes bright with unshed tears that made them look more like his than ever. You couldn't handle losing the job, fine. The mighty firefighter couldn't save everyone, couldn't be the hero anymore. But instead of dealing with it, instead of being there for your actual family, you're fixating on broken things you think you can fix. Like somehow saving this dog makes up for all the people you think you failed. The words hit like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. Lennox pulled into their driveway, the engine idling roughly as he struggled to find words. Della, I'm sorry. After the collapse, losing Thompson and Andrews, I wasn't in a good place. I know I shut down, pushed everyone away. The pain meds, the surgeries. Save it. She grabbed her bag and slammed the car door with enough force to rock the truck. I'm going to bed. Try not to wake me with your dog's crazy howling. Some of us have school tomorrow. Lennox watched her disappear inside the modest ranch house, her rigid back and quick steps broadcasting her hurt more clearly than any words. Guilt churned in his stomach, acidic and familiar. She was right. He'd withdrawn after the injury, let the depression and survivor's guilt swallow him whole. By the time he'd started pulling himself together, the distance between them felt impossible to bridge, a chasm too wide for his limited emotional tools to span. A low, sympathetic whine made him look back. Rook's amber eyes met his, full of that uncanny intelligence Maribel had noticed, a depth of understanding that sometimes made Lennox wonder who had rescued whom. The shepherd nosed Lennox's shoulder gently, his warm breath a comfort against his neck. Yeah, I know. Buddy. Lennox scratched the dog's ears, finding solace in the simple connection. I've got a lot of fixing to do. With her, with everything. But first, we need to figure out what's happening in that warehouse. Because my gut says people could get hurt if we don't, and I can't have more lives on my conscience." As if in direct response, a subtle vibration thrummed through the car frame, so faint most would miss it. Rook's ears pricked forward, his body tensing. Lennox checked his watch. 1:11 p.m. In less than 60 seconds, right on schedule, Rook would start howling at whatever dangerous secret Carlton Riggs was hiding behind those boarded windows and security fences. The question hammering in Lennox's mind, as persistent as his dog's coming cries, was how many more relationships would he damage before he uncovered the truth? And would there be anything left to salvage once he did? At precisely 1:12 in the morning, Rook's howl pierced the quiet neighborhood. Lennox sat at his kitchen table, notepad illuminated by a single lamp, and added another tally mark. 7 straight nights now. He pressed his hand against the table's surface, feeling the same faint vibration he'd noticed before. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" he muttered. Rook paced by the window, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor. The shepherd's ears were pricked forward, focused intently on the warehouse looming 3 blocks away. Through the window, Lennox could see lights moving behind the supposedly vacant building's boards, quick flashes like flashlights in motion. He grabbed his jacket and Rook's leash. "Let's check it out." The night air was crisp, carrying the metallic tang of machinery. As they approached the warehouse, the mechanical hum grew more distinct, a low, steady drone that seemed to come from underground. Rook's ears flattened against his skull. Movement caught Lennox's eye. A figure emerged from behind the building, limping heavily. In the dim streetlight, Lennox could make out oil-stained work clothes and hands raw from labor. "Hey!" Lennox called out. "You okay?" The man's head snapped up, eyes wide with fear. He was young, maybe early 20s, with the lean build of someone who'd missed too many meals. "No talk," he said quickly, backing away. "Por favor, please. No trouble." "Wait," Lennox stepped forward, keeping his voice gentle. "You're hurt. I can help." But the young man was already fleeing, his uneven gait carrying him into the shadows. Rook whined, tugging at the leash to follow. "I know, boy." Lennox stared at the warehouse. Something's very wrong here. The next morning, Lennox stopped at May's diner for coffee. The place was busy with the breakfast crowd, mostly construction workers and factory employees grabbing meals before their shifts. He settled at the counter, where May herself was refilling cups. "Heard your dog's still causing a ruckus," she said, topping off his mug, keeping the whole street up. "Sorry about that." Lennox hesitated, then asked, "May, what do you know about the work going on at Riggs' warehouse?" May's weathered face tightened. She glanced around before leaning closer. "Listen, hun. Carlton Riggs built half this town. The mall, the new hospital wing, all his money. Nobody asks questions about his business practices. Even when he's hiring undocumented workers, working them at night? Especially then." May straightened up as a customer waved for service. "Some folks say he brings them in by the truckload, pays cash, keeps them quiet, but you didn't hear that from me." Lennox spent the afternoon making calls. The building inspector's office claimed the warehouse was up to code. The police brushed him off, saying they'd look into it, with the kind of tone that meant they wouldn't. Even his old contact at the fire marshal's office was oddly evasive. "Look, Len," his friend had said, "Riggs makes generous donations to the department. New equipment, training facilities, we can't risk losing that funding. Besides, there's no evidence of wrongdoing." The words burned like acid in Lennox's gut. He'd heard similar excuses before, when budget concerns and politics got in the way of helping people. Once, He'd responded to a fire at a boarding house where the owner had ignored safety violations for years. 3 people died because someone thought money mattered more than lives. Now, watching another truck slip through the warehouse's back gate under cover of darkness, Lennox felt that same helpless fury rising. Rook pressed against his leg, sensing his tension. "They're all looking the other way," Lennox told the dog, "just like before. But we're not going to, are we?" Rook's answering bark was sharp and determined. Together they watched as more shadows moved behind the warehouse windows, accompanied by that persistent mechanical hum. Somewhere in there, a young man was limping through his work shift, probably afraid to seek medical help. How many others were trapped by fear and circumstance, while the town's power players pretended not to notice? Lennox pulled out his notebook and began documenting everything: times, dates, vehicle descriptions, patterns of movement. If the authorities wouldn't help, he'd build his own case. He owed it to that limping worker, to whatever was making Rook howl his warnings into the night. The vibrations seemed stronger now, thrumming through the ground like a heartbeat. At precisely 1:12, Rook threw back his head and began to howl. This time Lennox didn't try to quiet him. Instead, he added another note to his growing list of evidence. Mechanical noise intensifies between 1 and 1:30 a.m. Underground source: Rook reacts most strongly to northeast corner of building. He underlined the last part twice. Whatever Riggs was hiding, the answers were there, behind those boards, beneath that concrete. Now he just had to figure out how to expose it before someone got hurt. The deputy's cruiser rolled to a stop beside Lennox's driveway, lights off but engine running. Deputy Mills stepped out, adjusting his belt with practiced authority. "Mr. Hale," he called out, "got some complaints about you hanging around the industrial district." Lennox kept his voice steady. "It's public property, Deputy. The sidewalk's open to everyone." "Mr. Riggs says different. Says you've been photographing his property, bothering his workers." Mills moved closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "That's harassment, technically speaking." "Funny how quick the department responds to Riggs' complaints," Lennox said. "But when I call about suspicious activity, that's enough." Mills cut him off. "Consider this a friendly warning. Stay away from the warehouse, or next time it won't be just a talk." After the deputy left, Lennox watched Rook pace restlessly by the fence. The dog's behavior had changed over the past few days. Instead of general howling, he now focused entirely on one section of the warehouse's eastern wall. During their walks, he'd strain toward it, claws scraping concrete as he tried to dig at the foundation. That afternoon, Maribel stopped by to check Rook's torn pads from all the scratching. "This isn't normal anxiety," she said, gently rapping his paw. "I've worked with traumatized dogs. This is different. He's trying to tell us something." "You believe me?" Lennox hadn't expected support from the practical vet. "I believe in science," Maribel replied, watching Rook. "Dogs can sense things we can't. Subtle vibrations, chemical changes, even shifts in electromagnetic fields. Whatever's causing this, it's real to him." She hesitated. "And it's getting worse." A car door slammed outside. Della walked in, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She paused at the sight of Maribel, then nodded stiffly to her father. "Just getting some books I left," she said. "Don't let me interrupt your dog crisis." "Della," Lennox started, but she was already heading upstairs. Maribel packed up her supplies. "She's worried about you, you know, even if she doesn't show it." "Yeah, well," Lennox rubbed his face. "I wasn't exactly father of the year after the accident. Spent too much time feeling sorry for myself. Maybe it's not too late to change that." After Maribel left, Lennox heard music drifting down from Della's old room. He climbed the stairs, his back protesting each step. The door was open a crack. Inside, Della sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone. "What's that noise?" she asked suddenly, frowning at the screen. "What noise?" "Listen." She played back a video she'd been recording, probably for that social media thing she was always on. Behind her voice, there was a faint mechanical drone, pulsing in steady intervals. "When did you take this?" "Just now." Della looked up, really seeing him for the first time in weeks. "It's coming from outside, like an engine or something." Together they moved to the window. It faced east toward the warehouse. Rook stood in the yard below, rigid and alert, staring at that same damn wall. "Play it again," Lennox said. This time they both heard it clearly, a rhythmic thrumming that matched the vibrations he'd been feeling, real, recorded evidence. "That's what he's been reacting to," Lennox explained. "Every night at 1:12, like clockwork." "You really think something's wrong over there?" Della's voice held less skepticism than usual. "I know it is, but nobody will listen." Della was quiet for a moment, then pulled up her phone's audio software. "Here, we can clean up the background noise, isolate the frequency." Her fingers moved quickly over the screen. "I learned this in my media class." Lennox watched his daughter work, remembering how she used to help him fix his old truck, her small hands surprisingly capable. Before the accident, before he'd shut everyone out. "There," she said finally. The filtered sound was clearer now, a distinct mechanical pattern. Definitely not normal construction noise, too regular, too deep. "Will you help me?" Lennox asked softly. "I know I haven't given you much reason to trust my judgment lately." "You're right about that." Della's voice was sharp, but then she sighed. "But this is weird. And that dog of yours, he's not crazy. He knows something." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But as they bent over the phone, analyzing the recording, Lennox felt a familiar warmth. The sensation of working together, solving a problem as a team. Della pointed out patterns he'd missed. He shared his observations about timing and location. "We should document everything," she said finally. "Real evidence, not just notes. I can help with that part." Rook's howl rose from the yard, right on schedule. But this time it didn't feel like a lonely cry in the dark. This time someone else was listening too. Della jumped at the sound, then tried to hide it. "He's really loud." "Yeah." Lennox smiled slightly. "But maybe he needed to make us pay attention." They spent the next hour setting up a proper recording schedule, though the tension between them remained palpable. Every so often, Della would stiffen at an accidental touch or fall into cold silence. The wounds were still there, still raw, but they were working together, and for now, that had to be enough. The night air felt thick with tension as Lennox, Della, and Maribel crouched behind overgrown bushes near the warehouse fence. Della held her phone steady, its camera focused on the loading bay where harsh floodlights cast long shadows. "There," Maribel whispered, pointing to an unmarked white truck backing up to the dock. Rook lay silent between them, his ears pricked forward. For once, he wasn't howling, as if he understood the need for stealth. Two men in dark coveralls emerged from the warehouse. They worked quickly, rolling out large metal drums marked with yellow hazard stripes. Della zoomed in, capturing the industrial codes stenciled on their sides. "Can you read those numbers?" Lennox asked, squinting. "Got them," Della murmured, her fingers tapping notes into her phone. "But they're not standard OSHA codes. Something else." Maribel shifted closer, her veterinary training kicking in. "Those symbols. They're similar to what we use for biological waste, but not quite right." A drum slipped, clanging against the loading dock. The sound echoed through the empty lot. Rook's muscles tensed under Lennox's steadying hand. "Hey, who's there?" A security guard's voice boomed across the yard. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Stay still," Lennox breathed, but Rook was already rising, a low growl in his throat. The guard's light found them. "This is private property. Get out of here before I call the cops." Della quickly pocketed her phone as they stood. The guard advanced, hand moving to his hip where a holster gleamed. "We're leaving," Lennox said calmly, though his heart raced. "No trouble needed." "Already got trouble," the guard sneered, pulling out his phone. "Police are on their way. Mr. Riggs doesn't like spies." "Come on," Maribel tugged at Lennox's sleeve. "We have what we need." They hurried back to Maribel's truck, parked 2 blocks away. Behind them, they could hear the guard reading off their license plate number. "That was close," Della said, her earlier skepticism replaced by nervous energy. "Did you see how they tried to hide those drums when they spotted us?" "We need to decode those markings," Maribel replied, starting the engine. "Something about them feels wrong." The next morning, Lennox was fixing his front steps when a black SUV pulled into his driveway. Carlton Riggs himself stepped out, dressed in an expensive suit that seemed out of place in their modest neighborhood. "Mr. Hale?" Riggs called out, his smile too wide to be genuine. "Beautiful morning for home repairs?" Lennox set down his hammer, wiping sawdust from his hands. "What can I do for you, Mr. Riggs?" "Oh, just a friendly visit?" Riggs walked closer, examining the worn paint on Lennox's porch. "You know, I admire a man who takes care of his property, who knows his place in the community." The threat beneath the pleasant words was clear. Lennox remained silent, watching. "I understand you've been asking questions about my warehouse," Riggs continued. "Even brought your daughter into it. Shame to involve family in unnecessary concerns." "My dog seems pretty concerned," Lennox replied evenly. "Every night at the same time." Riggs's smile tightened. "Dogs can be trained out of bad habits, or replaced if necessary." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Word of advice, Mr. Hale. Digging into what's not yours can be dangerous, especially for a man already dealing with physical limitations." Inside the house, Rook began barking furiously. Riggs glanced at the window, then checked his expensive watch. "Well, I won't keep you from your work. Just remember, this town appreciates those who mind their own business. Good day, Mr. Hale." Lennox watched the SUV pull away, his hands clenched into fists. The hammer on the steps suddenly felt like a weapon. That afternoon, Maribel burst into his kitchen, waving a manila envelope. "This was in my clinic mailbox," she said, dumping the contents onto his table. "No return address." Blueprints spilled out, partial floor plans of what was clearly Riggs's warehouse. Red circles marked specific areas in the basement level, with handwritten notes about ventilation and containment. "Someone on the inside," Lennox muttered, studying the papers. "Someone's trying to help." "Or set us up," Della said from the doorway, making them both jump. She'd been spending more time at the house lately, her initial reluctance giving way to determined curiosity. "No," Maribel shook her head. "These are authentic. Look at the engineering stamps, the date codes. Someone's risking a lot to get these to us." Lennox thought of Mateo, the limping worker he'd seen that night, the fear in the man's eyes before he ran. "We need to be careful," he said, gathering the blueprints. "Riggs made it clear this morning he's watching us." "He threatened you?" Della's voice cracked slightly, showing a glimpse of the daughter who used to worry when he went into burning buildings. "He tried to." Lennox met her eyes. "But I've dealt with bullies before. They only win if you back down." "We need to decode those shipping numbers," Maribel said, pulling out her laptop, "and figure out what's in that basement that someone wants us to find." They bent over the blueprints together, while outside, Rook kept his vigil, watching the warehouse where secrets lay buried in the dark. Lennox spread the blueprints across his kitchen table, while Maribel traced the ventilation lines with her finger. Coffee cups littered the surface, evidence of their hours-long study session. "Look at this," Maribel said, pointing to a section marked in faded red ink. "These air handling units are way oversized for a storage facility, and see these pressure differential markers? They're all wrong for a standard warehouse." Lennox leaned in, his back twinging from sitting too long. "It's like they're trying to contain something. These safety systems." He tapped a complex diagram. "We used similar setups for hazmat incidents. Multiple redundancies, backup power. This is serious containment infrastructure." Rook paced by the window, whining softly. Every few minutes, he'd stop to stare in the direction of the warehouse, his whole body tense. "There's something else," Maribel said, pulling out another sheet. "These foundation plans show a deeper level than what's listed in the public records. See this area?" She pointed to a heavily annotated section. "It's completely sealed off from the main structure." Lennox's phone buzzed, making them both jump. An unknown number had sent a text. "Loading dock, NE corner. Accident 2 years ago. Area sealed, not empty, check. Pressure logs." "See." "Cass," Lennox muttered. "Has to be someone inside Riggs's operation." "Look at these dates," Maribel said, examining the blueprints more closely. The substructure was modified right around that time. They added all these containment features after whatever happened. Lennox felt his old firefighter instincts kick in. He grabbed a notepad and started listing inconsistencies. Oversized ventilation, positive pressure containment, chemical scrubbers, reinforced walls. This is all stuff we'd use for controlling hazardous environments. Rook suddenly let out a low growl, pressing his nose against the window. Outside, a truck rumbled past, heading toward the warehouse. "The timing fits," Maribel said, pulling up a calendar on her phone. "Rook's Howling starts at 1:12 every night. That's when they run the maintenance cycles. See these automated system logs?" Lennox stood up, his back protesting. He walked to the window and put his hand on Rook's head. The dog was trembling, just like he did whenever they got too close to the warehouse. "He's sensing something," Lennox said quietly. "Something trapped down there that no one's supposed to know about." Maribel joined them at the window. "These systems, they're not just containing chemicals. The patterns, the timing, it's almost like they're keeping something alive," Lennox finished. The words hung heavy in the air. They spent the next hour documenting everything. Maribel's medical knowledge helped identify equipment typically used for maintaining biological containment. Lennox's emergency response experience spotted all the signs of an ongoing crisis management operation. "We need to get closer," Lennox said finally. "All these systems have external monitoring points. If we could just get readings." "It's too dangerous," Maribel cut in. "After Riggs's threat." "I can't walk away," Lennox said, his voice firm. "Not when every instinct tells me there's something wrong. Not when Rook keeps trying to warn us." The dog looked up at his name, those intelligent eyes seeming to understand. He pressed against Lennox's leg, no longer trembling. "Whatever's down there," Lennox continued, "whatever accident they're hiding, it's hurting something. Someone. And Riggs is counting on everyone being too scared to look closer." Maribel was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but we do this smart. No unnecessary risks." "First, we need better equipment," Lennox said, pulling out his own phone. "I still know some people from the department. Hazmat monitors, thermal cameras. I can get biological detection gear through the clinic," Maribel added. "Make it look like routine testing." Rook padded over to the blueprints, nose twitching. He pawed at the section showing the sealed substructure, then looked up at Lennox with an almost human expression of concern. "I know, boy," Lennox said softly. "We'll figure it out. Whatever's down there, we'll find it." The dog's tail wagged once, tentatively. Outside, the sun was setting, painting long shadows across the kitchen floor. In a few hours, the night shift would start at the warehouse, and at precisely 1:12 in the morning, something beneath those reinforced walls would trigger Rook's desperate warning once again. Lennox gathered the blueprints carefully, storing them in a secure place. His back ached, but for the first time since his injury, he felt the old sense of purpose returning. Someone needed help. And despite Riggs's power, despite the risks, he couldn't ignore that call. "We start tomorrow," he told Maribel. "Whatever's happening down there has gone on long enough." She nodded, her face set with the same determination he felt. "I'll get the equipment. You work on access points." As she left, Rook settled by Lennox's feet, his vigilant gaze fixed on the warehouse barely visible through the gathering dusk. The trembling had stopped. Now there was only the patient alertness of a guardian who knew his warnings were finally being heard. Moonlight filtered through broken windows as Lennox, Maribel, and Rook crept toward the warehouse's rear entrance. The dog moved silently now, focused and alert. Lennox carried a backpack filled with borrowed hazmat gear, while Maribel clutched her medical kit. "Security camera's dead," Lennox whispered, pointing to the dangling device. "Just like Cass promised." They reached the rusted door. Lennox pulled out the keycard their mysterious ally had left in another unmarked envelope. His hands trembled slightly as he swiped it. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. Stale air hit them immediately. Lennox pulled out a handheld monitor, watching the readings carefully. "Oxygen level's okay, but there's something else. Chemical traces." Maribel pulled surgical masks from her bag, handing them out. "Better safe than sorry." Their flashlights revealed towering shelves packed with drums and crates. Some containers bore warning labels for industrial solvents. Others had no markings at all. Rook's ears perked up. He padded forward, nose working overtime, leading them deeper into the maze of storage. "There," Lennox breathed, stopping suddenly. A drum in the corner was slowly leaking, dark liquid pooling beneath it. The chemical monitor's display spiked. "That's not legal waste storage," Maribel said, taking readings with her own device. "These fumes could be toxic." A mechanical hum filled the air, and Lennox recognized it instantly. Compressor cycling. But the rhythm's wrong. Pressure's not stable. They followed the sound, weaving through the stacked containers. Rook grew more agitated with each step, fur bristling. The dog stopped at a large metal grate set into the floor. Lennox played his light across it, revealing heavy bolts and warning signs. But something else caught his attention. A faint whisper of air movement. "There's active ventilation down there," he said. "Recently used." Maribel pressed her ear to the grate. "Listen." They fell silent. Through the metal mesh came a sound that made Lennox's blood run cold. A muffled cough, distinctly human. "Someone's down there," he said, already reaching for his tools, "in a sealed area with chemical exposure." His firefighter training took over. He checked the surrounding air quality, tested the grate's stability, and started loosening bolts. A sharp bark from Rook made them freeze. Footsteps echoed from the direction they'd come. "Hey, who's in here?" Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Heavy boots approached. "Riggs's security," Lennox hissed. "Move!" They scrambled behind a stack of drums just as two men rounded the corner. Rook stayed perfectly still, pressed against Lennox's side. "Thought I heard something," one guard said, sweeping his light across the area. "Check the grate," the other ordered. "Make sure it's secured." Lennox held his breath. The guard's boots clanged against the metal as they tested the bolts he'd loosened. "Something's wrong here," the first guard said. "Call it in." A tremendous crash interrupted him as a stack of drums toppled nearby. Rook had slipped away and knocked them over. "What the hell?" The guards ran toward the noise. "Go!" Lennox urged, pushing Maribel toward a different aisle. They ran, ducking between containers as shouts and radio static filled the air. More guards were arriving. Flashlights crisscrossed everywhere. "There they are!" A shot rang out, pinging off metal above their heads. "They're shooting?" Maribel gasped. "Keep moving!" They sprinted through the maze of shelves. Behind them, someone knocked over more drums. Liquid splashed across the floor. The chemical detector screamed warnings. "Containment breach," a guard yelled. "Get the cleanup team!" Lennox's back screamed in protest as they ran. Rook appeared beside them, guiding them through the chaos. They burst through an emergency exit into the cool night air. Car engines roared to life in the parking lot. "Split up," Lennox ordered. "They can't chase us all." Maribel nodded and sprinted one way, while Lennox and Rook went another. They ducked through a gap in the fence just as headlights swept past. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of back streets, several blocks away. Lennox's legs gave out, and he slumped against a wall, gasping. Rook pressed against him, whining softly. The dog's concern was clear. They'd left someone behind. "I know," Lennox panted. "We heard them. People trapped down there, breathing those chemicals." His mind raced through what they'd discovered: the illegal storage, the ventilation system, the hidden chamber, and most damning, proof of human presence in a sealed, toxic environment. His phone buzzed. A text from Maribel. "Made it home safe. What now?" Lennox thought of the cough they'd heard, echoing up through that grate. Someone was counting on them, trapped in Riggs's underground prison. He texted back, "We go to the authorities. Tonight." But even as he sent it, he knew the local police were in Riggs's pocket. They needed higher authorities, concrete evidence, and a plan to get those people out before the chemicals killed them. The sound of distant sirens made them move again, keeping to shadows as they made their way home. Rook stayed close, his usual midnight howling replaced by worried glances back toward the warehouse. They'd survived the night's discovery, but now the real challenge began. Somewhere beneath that warehouse floor, people were suffering. And Lennox knew he wouldn't rest until they were free. Lennox's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sat at his kitchen table, still wearing the dirt-stained clothes from their warehouse break-in, while Maribel cleaned a cut on his arm. Rook paced anxiously between them. A knock at the back door made them all jump. Della peered through the window, then quickly let Matteo inside. The young man's face was drawn with worry. "I got your message," Matteo said, his voice trembling. "You found something in there?" Before Lennox could answer, another knock came. This time their inside source, Cass, a warehouse clerk who'd been slipping them information. She entered, clutching a thick folder to her chest. "I can't stay long," Cass said, laying out documents on the table. "But you need to see this." They gathered around as she spread out shipping manifests, work schedules, and hand-drawn maps of the sub-basement. "Riggs has been running an illegal disposal operation," Cass explained, pointing to chemical codes on the papers. "Dangerous industrial waste that's expensive to process properly. He's been using undocumented workers to handle it." Matteo grabbed one of the papers, his hands shaking. "My brother, he's down there?" Cass nodded sadly. "Along with 5 others. They live in the sub-basement, working 12-hour shifts handling the chemicals. The ventilation is failing. They're getting sick. Lennox's jaw clenched. That's why Rook howls at the same time every night. They're cycling the air system, releasing fumes. The workers can't leave, Cass continued. Riggs holds their documents, threatens their families. The chemicals are eating through the containment drums. It's getting worse. Maribel studied the medical supply lists with growing horror. These exposure levels, they won't survive much longer without treatment. We have to get them out, Lennox said, his voice firm. Della, who had been quietly filming the documents with her phone, looked up. I have almost 10,000 followers on social media. We can expose this. Carefully, Maribel warned. We can't put the workers at risk of deportation. I can edit the footage, Della said. Focus on the chemical hazards. Get people asking questions. Lennox watched his daughter work, feeling a surge of pride at her determination. She had her mother's skill with technology, but her sense of justice came from him. We'll need medical supplies, Maribel said, making lists. Oxygen, protective gear, decontamination equipment. I can get basics from my clinic, but we'll need more. I know where they keep the workers, Mateo said. Which corridors to use. My brother, he managed to tell me before. His voice broke. Lennox put a steady hand on the young man's shoulder. We'll get him out, all of them. Cass checked her watch nervously. Riggs is bringing in federal inspectors next week for a surface review. Everything dangerous will be hidden. It's our best chance to move. That's not much time, Maribel said. It has to be enough, Lennox replied. He spread out the basement maps, his firefighter training kicking in. We need evacuation routes, emergency medical stations, safe houses ready. Della looked up from her phone. First video is uploaded. Careful edits, no faces or names, just enough to get attention. They worked through the night, planning. Maribel called trusted medical contacts. Della coordinated with online activists who could amplify the story without revealing sources. Mateo and Cass marked entry points and patrol patterns on the maps. Rook stayed alert, watching the windows. His midnight howling had taken on new meaning, a cry of protest against human cruelty. We'll need at least 3 teams, Lennox said, drawing routes on the maps. Medical support here, evacuation through these corridors, and a team to secure the evidence of chemical dumping. I've got protective gear and oxygen coming, Maribel said, hidden in veterinary supply orders. My brother's contact in the immigrant community has safe houses ready, Mateo added, places Riggs won't look. Lennox studied their faces, his daughter fierce and focused, Maribel steady and determined, Mateo driven by love for his brother, Cass risking everything to do what's right. They were an unlikely team, brought together by a dog's midnight howling and a shared refusal to look away from injustice. Get some rest, he told them. Tomorrow we start gathering supplies. In 5 days we get those people out. As the others left, Della stayed behind. She sat beside her father, shoulder to shoulder like when she was small. I used to think you were obsessed with broken things, she said quietly. But you were right about Rook, about all of it. Lennox reached for her hand. I'm proud of you, helping these people. I learned from you, she replied. Even when I was angry about your work, your accidents, I saw how you never stopped trying to save people. Rook came over and laid his head on their joined hands, his dark eyes wise and worried. Outside, the warehouse loomed in the distance, holding its terrible secrets. But not for much longer. They had a plan, a team, and most importantly, the will to act while others looked away. 5 days to prepare. 6 lives hanging in the balance. 1 chance to get it right. Thunder rolled across the dark sky as Lennox checked his oxygen mask one final time. The storm's first heavy drops struck the pavement, matching the pounding of his heart. Behind him, Maribel distributed protective gear to their small rescue team. Communications check, Lennox said into his radio. Static crackled before Della's voice came through. Command post is set up. I've got eyes on the loading bay and main entrance. Rook pressed against Lennox's leg, alert and focused. The dog's midnight warnings had led them here, and now he would help guide them through the maze below. Remember, Lennox addressed the team, we move fast but careful. These fumes are toxic. If your mask fails, head for the surface immediately. Lightning split the sky as they approached the access point Matteo had identified. The lock gave way under their specialized tools, and they slipped inside just as the storm broke in earnest. The air grew thick as they descended. Even through the mask, Lennox caught traces of something acidic. His old firefighting instincts screamed warnings with every step. First chemical leak ahead, he radioed, spotting the telltale sheen on the floor. Watch your footing. Rook moved with purpose, leading them past the worst patches. The dog's previous exposure had given him an uncanny sense for where the fumes gathered strongest. They reached the first junction when a deep rumble shook the walls. Loose debris showered down as thunder crashed overhead. Structure's not stable, Lennox warned. Storms putting pressure on weakened supports. He spotted a major leak in an overhead pipe, chemicals eating through the metal. Drawing on years of experience, he quickly applied emergency sealant foam, containing the worst of it. How many more sections? He asked Matteo. 2 more corridors to reach them, Matteo replied, voice tight with worry for his brother. Another shake rattled the passage. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling, and Lennox's trained eye caught the signs of imminent collapse. Move, he shouted, shoving Matteo forward as concrete chunks began falling. Rook barked sharply, guiding them toward a side passage just as the main corridor caved in behind them. Dust and debris filled the air. Dad? Della's worried voice crackled through the radio. What's happening? Partial collapse, he answered, coughing despite his mask. We're cut off from our primary exit. Through the settling dust, he assessed their situation. The new passage was intact, but unfamiliar. Rook whined, pawing at Lennox's leg, trying to guide him. Trust the dog, Maribel said. He knows these fumes better than we do. Lennox nodded. Della, start documenting everything. We'll need evidence of these conditions. Already streaming, she replied. People are watching, Dad. Be careful. They followed Rook through the maze of corridors, Lennox sealing the worst chemical leaks as they progressed. His back ached from the old injury, but he pushed through it. Lives depended on them. Another tremor shook the structure. A support beam groaned ominously above them. Watch out, Lennox called, but the beam gave way too. Quickly. He shoved Matteo clear, but couldn't dodge completely. The falling metal clipped his shoulder, driving him to his knees. Lennox, Maribel rushed to check his injury. I'm okay, he grunted, though pain flared through his shoulder. Keep moving. Rook refused to leave his side, helping brace him as he stood. The dog's eyes held steady concern, reminding Lennox of all those midnight howls, warnings they'd finally understood. They found the trapped workers in a low-ceilinged room, huddled around failing ventilation fans. 6 men, pale and struggling to breathe the tainted air. Miguel! Matteo rushed to his brother, who could barely lift his head. Get them masks first, Lennox ordered, fighting his own pain to help distribute emergency oxygen. Above them, the storm's fury grew. The whole structure groaned under the pressure of wind and rain finding ways into stressed foundations. Dad, the police are coming, Della's voice warned. Someone called them. You need to hurry. Lennox helped Miguel to his feet while Maribel checked vital signs. The other workers were weak but mobile. New exit route, he radioed. Rook, find us a way out. The dog led them through a series of maintenance passages, choosing paths that avoided the worst chemical concentrations. Lennox's shoulder screamed with every movement, but he kept Miguel upright, refusing to let Mateo's brother fall. Through his radio, he heard Della gasp. "Dad, you have to see this footage. The whole building is shifting. The storm's destroying Riggs's cover-up." Concrete dust rained steadily now. Support columns swayed with each new tremor. Lennox recognized the signs of catastrophic structural failure. "Almost there," he encouraged the group. "Just a little further." Rook suddenly stopped, hackles raised. Ahead, metal screamed as another section began to give way. "Back!" Lennox shouted. "Other direction now!" They retreated just as the ceiling collapsed, but the chain reaction had started. The whole complex was coming down. Through gaps in the falling debris, Lennox caught glimpses of emergency lights above. Their time had run out. "Della, tell the police there are people trapped down here," he radioed. "Make them help." "They're seeing it, Dad," she replied, voice thick with emotion. "Everyone's seeing it now. You were right all along." Rook barked sharply, scratching at a maintenance hatch they'd missed earlier. Lennox recognized the dog's certainty, the same instinct that had driven those midnight warnings. "This way," he called to the others. "One last push." They climbed through the hatch just as the final supports failed. Lennox emerged last into the rain, helping Miguel over the threshold before his legs gave out. Emergency vehicles' lights painted the storm clouds red and blue. Della ran toward them, phone still recording, tears mixing with rain on her face. Looking at her father now, battered, soaked, but triumphant, she saw not a broken man obsessed with midnight howls, but a hero who had never stopped fighting for others. Behind them, Riggs's warehouse continued its slow collapse, revealing its poisonous secrets to the world. But Lennox barely noticed, focused instead on the 6 lives they'd saved, and the proud way his daughter looked at him now. Rook pressed close, rain darkening his fur, his mission finally complete. The midnight howling had led them here, to truth and justice and lives saved in the storm. Red and blue lights strobed through the rain as police cars and emergency vehicles surrounded the collapsing warehouse. Lennox stood with the rescued workers, his shoulder throbbing, while paramedics checked their vital signs. Rook pressed close against his leg, both of them soaked to the bone. "Step away from them, Mr. Hale." Sheriff Cooper's voice cut through the storm. 2 deputies flanked him, hands on their weapons. Before Lennox could respond, a black SUV pulled up. Carlton Riggs stepped out, umbrella unfurling as smooth as his practiced smile. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he asked, voice dripping with false concern. "Saved lives," Lennox said firmly. "These men were trapped down there with toxic—" "These men," Riggs interrupted, "were never supposed to be in that building. They broke in, looking to steal copper wire. And you, in your reckless vigilante attempt to play hero again, compromised the structure's integrity and nearly got them killed." Lennox's jaw tightened. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Riggs turned to the sheriff. "I have security footage of Mr. Hale breaking into my property multiple times. Tonight, his actions caused catastrophic damage to a building already scheduled for environmental remediation. The rescued workers tried to speak up, but Riggs's security team quickly separated them, hustling them toward waiting vehicles. Miguel could barely stand, but they grabbed him anyway. "Hey!" Mateo protested. "My brother needs medical attention." "They'll all receive proper care," Riggs assured smoothly. "After we sort out their legal status, of course." Della pushed forward with her phone. "I have video of everything. The chemical drums, the hidden sub-basement." A deputy confiscated her phone before she could finish. "Evidence in an ongoing investigation," he said flatly. Maribel stepped between them. Those men need immediate treatment for chemical exposure. As a medical professional. Dr. Cortez, Riggs cut in, I'd hate for the board to review your clinic's permits over your involvement in this break-in. The threat hung heavy in the rain. Lennox watched helplessly as his evidence slipped away. The sheriff approached with handcuffs. Lennox Hale, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing, vandalism, and reckless endangerment. Dad! Della tried to intervene, but Maribel held her back. Rook growled as they cuffed Lennox, but he commanded firmly, Stay. Protect them. The ride to the station passed in a blur of windshield wipers and radio chatter. Through the cage partition, Lennox heard updates about Riggs's PR team already spinning the story. Former firefighters' obsession leads to dangerous break-in, property damage in the millions, illegal immigrants endangered by vigilante actions. They processed him efficiently, taking prints and photos, confiscating his personal items. The holding cell smelled of despair and industrial cleaner. His shoulder screamed for medical attention, but they made him wait. Hours later, Sheriff Cooper appeared with a stern-faced lawyer in an expensive suit. Mr. Riggs is willing to be lenient, the lawyer said, given your history of service and apparent mental health struggles since your injury. If you sign a statement admitting fault and agree to cease all harassment. No. Lennox's voice was hoarse but firm. Be smart about this, Cooper warned. Riggs can bury you in legal fees alone. Think about your daughter. The mention of Della twisted in his gut. He'd tried to do the right thing, and now she'd watch him be destroyed for it. But at home, Della refused to accept defeat. She paced Lennox's living room while Maribel tried to calm Rook's anxious whining. They took my phone, but the stream saved automatically, Della said. I just need to access my cloud storage. Riggs's lawyers will claim it was edited or taken out of context, Maribel warned. We need something stronger. A text message lit up Della's laptop. Unknown number. Check your email. See. They huddled around the screen as Della opened a large audio file. Cass's secret recordings filled the room with damning evidence. Riggs's voice. I don't care about the leak. Seal the breach, keep them down there until the job's done. Another voice. Sir, the fumes are getting worse. OSHA would shut. OSHA doesn't know about this level. Keep it that way, or you'll never work again, clear? Message after message, order after order. Riggs orchestrating the whole operation, fully aware of the danger to human life. This is it, Della breathed. This is what we needed. Maribel was already downloading copies. We need to release these before Riggs can block them. Multiple channels. No, Della said. First we make him think he's won. Then we blindside him like he did to Dad. They worked through the night, preparing their counterattack while Lennox sat in his cell, unaware that the tide was about to turn. By morning, his spirits had hit rock bottom. The local news painted him as a dangerous vigilante. Former colleagues distanced themselves. His lawyer advised taking the deal. But when they brought him to the interview room, Della was waiting. She looked exhausted but determined. Sign nothing, she said firmly. We have him, Dad. We just need you to hold on a little longer. Lennox studied his daughter's face, seeing his own stubborn resolve reflected back. Despite everything, she believed in him. Maybe that was enough. I'm not giving up, he promised. Whatever it takes. Through the window, storm clouds, finally, began to break. Somewhere in the distance, Rook's howl rose up. Not a warning this time, but a call to battle. The darkest hour was passing. The final fight for justice was about to begin. The county courthouse buzzed with tension. Television crews jostled for position outside, while deputies maintained strict security at every entrance. Inside, Lennox sat stiffly in his suit, his injured shoulder still wrapped in bandages. Della squeezed his hand as Commissioner Wallace called the emergency hearing to order. Due to the serious nature of these allegations, Wallace began, we've convened this special session to— Objection! Riggs's lawyer shot up. This is a publicity stunt meant to damage my client's reputation before proper legal channels. Overruled, Wallace cut in. The public safety implications warrant immediate review. Maribel approached the podium first, medical records in hand. As a licensed veterinarian, I documented chemical exposure symptoms in multiple individuals rescued from the sub-basement facility. These match known reactions to industrial solvents found in Mr. Riggs's warehouse. She displayed photos of chemical burns and respiratory damage on the projection screen. Several council members winced. Furthermore, she continued, soil samples from the surrounding area show concerning levels of contamination consistent with improper waste disposal. Riggs maintained his confident smile, but Lennox noticed his jaw tightening. The developer leaned to whisper to his lawyer as Della took the stand next. I have audio recordings and documentation, she said clearly, proving Mr. Riggs knowingly endangered workers and covered up multiple safety violations. The courthouse speakers crackled with Riggs's own voice. Keep them down there until the job's done. The timeline of recordings painted a damning picture of calculated cruelty. Riggs's lawyer objected to the authenticity, but Della was ready. The files have been verified by forensic audio experts. Their sworn statements are included in your packets. She played more clips. Riggs ordering illegal dumping. Riggs threatening workers who complained about conditions. Riggs discussing bribes to local officials. The room grew increasingly tense. Several of Riggs's supporters slipped out quietly. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then Cass stepped forward. The former safety inspector looked nervous but determined. I helped cover up violations at the warehouse for 3 years, he admitted. Mr. Riggs paid me to falsify reports and ignore complaints. You're admitting to criminal conduct, Wallace noted. Yes, sir. I've provided detailed documentation to the state attorney's office. I couldn't live with it anymore after workers started getting sick. Riggs's smile finally cracked. He grabbed his phone, fingers stabbing at the screen. Mr. Riggs, Wallace warned, please refrain from communication during testimony. But it was too late. The viral storm had already begun. Della's carefully prepared media packages were spreading across social networks. Local news stations interrupted regular programming with breaking coverage. Lennox watched the screens outside through the courthouse windows. Crowds were gathering, holding signs demanding justice. More reporters arrived by the minute. Inside, the testimony continued. Former workers described horrible conditions. Safety experts outlined dozens of violations. Environmental specialists detailed contamination risks. Riggs's lawyer tried to maintain control through objections and procedural challenges, but the evidence was overwhelming. When state police entered the chamber, Riggs finally lost his composure. This is a witch hunt, he shouted, rising. I've brought jobs and development to this town while you all sat back and— Mr. Riggs, the lead investigator cut in. You're under arrest for multiple violations of environmental law, worker safety regulations, and human trafficking statutes. As they led Riggs away in handcuffs, he glared at Lennox. You'll regret this, all of you. But his threats rang hollow now. The power he'd wielded through money and influence was crumbling in real time. Commissioner Wallace called for order as the room erupted in chaos. In light of this evidence, I'm issuing an emergency order to seal the warehouse facility pending full investigation. All of Mr. Riggs's local permits and contracts are suspended immediately. Lennox felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Della hugged him carefully, mindful of his injuries. We did it, Dad. Maribel joined them, smiling. The state environmental team is already setting up containment procedures. They'll clean up his mess properly now. Outside, they found Rook waiting in Maribel's truck. The dog's tail wagged as they approached, his dark eyes somehow knowing. The nightly howling that had started it all would finally stop. News cameras surrounded them as they emerged, but Lennox let Della handle the interviews. She'd grown so much through this fight, finding her voice and her courage. He was prouder of that than any victory over Riggs. The system worked, she told reporters, but only because people refused to look away. My father taught me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always right. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds as cleanup crews descended on the warehouse. Patrol cars surrounded Riggs's office building, removing boxes of evidence. His carefully constructed empire was being dismantled piece by piece. Lennox watched it all from a courthouse bench, exhausted but at peace. Justice had finally come, not through force or power, but through persistence and truth. The price had been high, his injuries, legal troubles, public criticism, but the cost of silence would have been higher. 2 weeks after Riggs's arrest, the autumn air carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. Workers were finishing repairs on the warehouse district, transforming it from a symbol of corruption into something hopeful. The toxic waste had been properly removed, the underground chambers thoroughly cleaned and sealed. Lennox sat on his front porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft oranges. His back still ached from the rescue, but it was a different kind of pain now, one earned through purpose rather than loss. Rook lay at his feet, no longer the trembling, haunted creature who'd howled at hidden dangers. The shepherd's torn ear twitched occasionally, but his eyes were peaceful as he dozed. The screen door creaked, and Della stepped out carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Made your favorite," she said, handing him some coffee. "Extra strong, like your stubborn personality?" Lennox smiled at the gentle teasing. The tension that had stretched between them for so long had softened into something warmer. "Takes one to know one," he replied. "You were pretty stubborn yourself, sticking with this fight." "I learned from the best." Della settled into the chair beside him. "You know, I used to think you were just living in the past, trying to be the hero when you needed to move on. I was wrong." "We both were," Lennox admitted. "I shut down after the injury pushed everyone away, including you." "Yeah, well..." Della reached down to scratch Rook's ears. "This guy helped fix that. Who knew a howling dog would bring us back together?" The evening grew quiet around them, broken only by the distant sounds of children playing. No more mysterious hums from the warehouse. No more midnight alarms that only Rook could hear. Maribel's truck pulled into the driveway, right on schedule for their evening walk. She'd been coming by regularly to check on Rook's recovery, though Lennox suspected she had other reasons too. "How's our hero doing?" she asked, kneeling to examine Rook. The dog's tail thumped happily against the porch boards. "Sleeping through the night," Lennox reported. "No more nightmares for either of us." "The chemical exposure sensitivity should keep fading," Maribel said. "Though I have to admit, I'm glad he was sensitive enough to notice what was happening. He saved lives." "We all did," Della corrected. She pulled out her phone to show them the latest news. The state investigation has spread to 3 other facilities. More workers coming forward every day. Riggs's whole network is falling apart. They set off down the street together, Rook trotting contentedly beside them. The neighborhood felt different now. Neighbors waved instead of turning away. Children called out greetings to Officer Rook, their new name for the vigilant shepherd. "Remember when everyone thought he was just making noise?" Della asked. "Now they're calling him a hero." "Sometimes the loudest voices are the ones we need to hear most," Lennox said quietly, "even when they're inconvenient." They passed the warehouse, its fresh paint gleaming in the evening light. Local artists had covered one wall with a mural, hands joined together, rising from darkness into light. A small plaque commemorated those who'd been trapped below, and those who'd fought to save them. Lennox paused, remembering the fear and desperation of that rescue, but the memories no longer haunted him. He'd found his way back to who he was meant to be, not despite his injuries, but because of how they'd led him here. "Dad?" Della touched his arm. "You okay?" "Yeah." He smiled, genuinely at peace. "Just grateful." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across their path. Rook walked steadily beside them, head high, no longer searching for hidden dangers. The night would come as it always did, but now it brought only natural silence, broken by cricket songs and evening breezes. They turned toward home, their footsteps in easy rhythm. Lennox felt the rightness of this moment, his daughter beside him, friends who'd stood by him, and a dog who'd helped him remember who he was. He didn't need a badge or a uniform to make a difference. Sometimes courage was just refusing to ignore what others wouldn't see. The stars began appearing overhead, bright and clear. No sirens split the darkness, no desperate howls called out for justice. Just the quiet sounds of a town healing and a family restored.